Hey, good morning. Happy Sunday. It's a very happy Father's Day. Shout out to all the dads out there who take care of their kids. And thank you all for joining us and jumping into the rotation with Suncoast Normal. We're going to get into introductions here in a second. But on this happiest of Father's Day, I want to send a very special shout out to all those dads out there that are making a difference in their sons' lives. I got to say a big happy Father's Day to Carlos Hermida Sr., the man, the myth, the legend, for giving us this beautiful young man over here to my right, Carlos. So
made in his image.
Yep. Shout out Poppy. Poppy always says I never mention him on the rotation, so I have to make it a point to start off this happy Father's Day and say thank you, Poppy, for sharing the Carlos with the world.
We should do that segment, the My Cuban Dags segment, a little bit more.
Oh yeah, we're definitely gonna bring Poppy back to the show and hear some more about how his views. I had a really good time at my son's birthday last weekend, just chatting with your dad and hearing his story, and it's just pretty cool.
Sure, he's wanted to talk to you about the horrors of communism for a while.
I mean, yeah, hearing his experiences in Cuba and just like the struggle that he went through just to survive, the revolution and to come here and get and start a whole new life and create a family with your mom. I mean, it's pretty powerful story, and then there's a lot of great fathers out there who do great things with their kids. Your dad is not a cannabis consumer, but the fact that he embraced you being a part of this movement, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Very much so. My dad's very hard to get through to. I will say that. And it took a while to really show my parents that I wasn't becoming a drug dealer. But what the tipping point for that whole thing, and that it goes to show how compassionate my parents actually are, is when they met Giselle from the Canna Moms. And we had lunch, and I remember Giselle looking my parents in the eye and being like, I'm a mother, and this is my last option to save my son, so I'm gonna do it no matter what. And they were like, okay, we're in. I saw it right then and there.
Support is support.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing. We're going to talk about that and numerous other topics today. But the topic of parents and cannabis in a country where it's been demonized and over criminalized is a very sensitive issue. And depending on what state you're in, whether you have access to it during pregnancy to help you with morning sickness, or whether you have access to it postpartum to help with pain and suffering, or whether or not just utilizing it can have your kid taken away from you. Right. There's a hodgepodge of laws, and we have a very great guest today who's also going to jump in with that. Before we do all of that and get into everything, it's now time for you to go ahead, calm down, spark up, and jump into the rotation. So again, happy Sunday, everyone. Happy Father's Day. My name is Christopher Cano. I am the executive director here at the Suncoast chapter of Normal. Also serve on the national board of directors for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, Normal, which has been working to legalize it for all responsible cannabis consumers since 1970.
Wow.
Yeah. And believe it or not, the founder of Normal, Keith Straub, still sits on the board and is our chief counsel, even in his 80s. So, shout out to Keith and happy Father's Day to him.
One of my favorite shows was the one we did with him.
Yeah. So the father of Normal, happy Father's Day to Keith Straub, making it happen, and shout out to all the fathers out there on the Normal board of directors. I want to introduce, of course, our very awesome and generous studio engineer. The man who's given Normal a home here in the Tampa Bay area, broadcasted live here at Ybor City at a Chillum mushroom and hemp dispensary, Carlos Hermida.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. And as you can see, the letters after his name, put some respect on it. So.
Yeah.
And then
I used to play basketball. That's what that means.
For the dyslexic out there, he did not play basketball. It means master's in business administration. So, and then of course we have our beautiful and lovely communications director, Katrina Pink. in the house. So for those of you all who don't know, Katrina has been a cannabis critic and one of our regular judges from the Best Blunt and Debate Rolling Competition over the years, which is also the largest criminal justice reform fundraiser we have each and every year in the springtime. And Katrina has so graciously joined the board of directors here at Suncoast Normal to help us with our communications, and she will be a regular here at correspondent on the rotation. So we're just happy to have her. And if you see her out in the streets, say what's up and make sure that you give a like and follow the Suncoast Normal.
Right. Let's go get into it, everybody. It's great to be here. Again, Jamie, again, I can't get past the skin. I know this is something totally off subject, but it's glowing. It's a beautiful thing. But I'm glad to be here, Kano. I thank you for the huge opportunity, and it was taken. And to be close to Carlos like this, of course, the name, y'all have to respect it. It's a huge honor. And I'm just happy to be here.
Any fathers out there you want to give a shout out to?
A shout out to my dad. Happy Father's Day, Pops, for you. All of my daughters, Pops, my brothers, Elijah, Tyrone, Willie. To see them go from where they was to who they became as fathers once they had kids was because they too did not have the father figure as long as they should have. But to see them care for their sons and understand that role is major key to me. No matter how many kids my brothers have, a game, if they're not there, one of us have to be there or something to the support. The support is very huge in our family. So shout out to all the fathers again. Like I say, that's supportive of their daughters and sons, even the step kids. Shout out. And
and then it's a real thing. As a father, there's some days where you got to spend a lot of time working, but that doesn't mean you can't be present. So that's great that they can organize other family to be there. I know my own dad. I mean, he didn't make it to every football game. Sometimes he had to work late, but he made sure my mom was there. He made sure the grandparents were there. So shout out to all the dads that are making it happen in their kids' lives, even when they can't be there 24/7. Yep. And so that's a lot to be a parent and to have to manage through everything, work full time. There's a lot of moms. Last month they were celebrating with Mother's Day. Today we're celebrating Father's Day. And to all the working folks out there trying to make it happen for their families, that thank you for grinding, especially you cannabis parents out there. At the end of the day, sometimes some parents will pop up with a bottle of whiskey. Some will drink a glass of wine. But for those who want to have a dab or a blunt or a joint or have an edible after the kids go to bed, by all means, keep doing what you're doing, keep trucking and proving that the rumors, the propaganda just isn't true, that you can be a great parent, you can be a productive member of society. As the days that Peter Tosh said, judges smoke it, doctors smoke it. Yes, especially parents smoke it. And I do want to say to those parents who do partake, don't be a hypocrite when your kids come about it. And that's a whole nother story that we can get into. But Carlos has actually written a book for parents on how to talk to their kids about cannabis. You can check it out on Amazon and download it and give you an opportunity there. Just go on Amazon.com, type in Carlos Hermida and how to talk to your kids about cannabis. And it's actually by Central Florida Normal when we first came out. Carlos is going to drop the link in the chat so folks can get that. But I think it's important as we move forward in society and things happen. You're going to see prohibitionists, and we're seeing this a lot throughout the country, push back on people's civil rights and work to over criminalize things and work to take us backwards. And we're seeing it with elected officials who are out of touch with what the public want. I mean, we've seen multiple states where the public has legalized it, and then we see the people in office doing everything they can. We saw it here in Florida of not giving us access to grow at home. We see it in other states where they're trying to just revoke and ignore the laws entirely. In Texas, several cities decriminalized it, and now they're recriminalizing it throughout the state, saying that cities don't have a right to do that. And so politicians are really out of touch right now. And like I said before, depending on what state you're in, just being a cannabis consumer can cost you your kids, can take your whole family away. There's a mother in South Carolina, I recall, who needed to utilize cannabis during a pregnancy for difficult symptoms that she had, and she ended up when it came to the hospital and tested positive, they took her baby away as soon as it was born, and that baby is now 4 years old, and she still hasn't seen it since the day it was born. Those are the type of horror stories that really move us and keep us pushing forward on public policy keeping pushing forward on making to change these laws. We've even written a parental rights protection bill in the state of Florida. We're running on now, 2 years trying to get that passed, and we're going to continue to fight because we've seen other states like California and New York do that and pass those laws. And our special guest today is actually New York based, and she's going to talk a little bit about what's going on up there. And again, when we talk about communications and getting the word out and spreading the good news of cannabis policy, she's making a big splash and making that happen. Jaime Lubin, Jaime, welcome for jumping in the rotation today.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, Katrina.
So on the topic of like parents and cannabis, I know New York passed a law that protects parents' rights when they're being cannabis consumers. Tell us a little bit about New York, because folks across the country only hear what's the media propaganda machine oftentimes wants us to think, and they think that the rollout for cannabis is so bad. But I love the fact that I was able to go to Times Square and spark up a blunt, and just not be bothered by the NYPD. That would be unthinkable 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, New York is in a really interesting and also complicated place right now because, yes, we did legalize. We have had the Marijuana Regulation and Tax Act, the MRTA, that basically governs our cannabis regulations here. And we have had that as our guiding light. It is supposed to be putting people's civil rights and humanitarian rights forward. There has definitely been a little bit of regulatory pushback on certain things. Our licensing process has been a bit slow to get started, but I feel it has really ramped up a lot in the last year and a half. We have now over 120 dispensaries in New York State, which is amazing. We have so many great ones right here in Manhattan, where I am. I can definitely shout out quite a few of them. Mighty lucky we just had a wonderful event during the 420 week for my friend Catherine Hiller. So that was great.
Shout out to Catherine Hiller. She was a guest on the rotation. Folks can go back and watch that episode on our YouTube channel and browse through. Facebook actually deletes the videos now after 30 days. So, but yeah, go back on the YouTube, check out our episode with Catherine Hiller, her amazing memoir, Just Say Yes. Especially being a mom and her perspective on being a cannabis user was great. And Jaime, thanks for helping us get her connected on the show. We appreciate you.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, that book is fantastic. Just Say Yes, the 10th anniversary edition is out now from Heliotrope Books. You can find it on Amazon, and it is a wonderful marijuana memoir from somebody who is now 78 years old. She says that all the time herself. And she is just a really great example of what a lifelong cannabis advocate looks like, and a mom and a grandma. So, we're talking about parents today, and Catherine's a really fantastic example.
Yeah, she was really cool.
Indeed. Yeah, Jaime, how did you get into becoming a cannabis advocate, working? I know you're an effective communicator. I know you work also in the legal field, but you've done a lot. If folks check out your bio, you just had an amazing journey. And take us a little bit about how you got from where you are today to where you started.
Oh, goodness. It's been a very interesting journey for me because I have not really been what I would consider a big cannabis consumer. I am more so now than I was before I really got into the movement and the community. But I still have not smoked a joint yet. That probably is not going to be my delivery method. I just am more of an edibles and beverages girl.
That's awesome. Yeah. We say that all the time here in Florida because the politicians always try to inject themselves into people's personal lives. I'm like, your method of ingestion is between you and your physician, and so that's absolutely great. And then we need more people to say that, like, no, I don't smoke, but yeah, pass that edible.
Totally.
You probably, if smoking is not your thing, you probably shouldn't do dabs either. I'm just
Oh my God,
interjecting.
it's the
Yeah.
dab guy.
So Carlos, it loves to give people their first dab. So Jamie, if you ever decide that that's the route you want to go down, don't do it with Carlos.
I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I think the first stab is you're in for it. You know what I mean? Like if you go through that experience and you still are a dabber after that, like that's your thing. You know that's your thing.
Yeah. If you enjoy having your lungs on the floor from doing that 500-degree dab that Carlos just gave you, it is definitely your thing. But I will say this much: this man, I hadn't smoked in close to a year because the court made me go to rehab, which is the most absurd thing in the world.
Exactly.
I felt like Dave Chappelle in Half Baked, like, what am I doing here? So, and then some guy like Bob Saget stands up. For those of you who don't get the joke, you too young. That's the problem. Too young.
Yeah, the new generation doesn't appreciate.
The new generation hasn't seen Half Baked. They haven't seen Friday. Jamie, that's a great segue. Just generationally, how do we adapt communication, right? Like, millennials and Gen Xers have had such great cannabis media over the years, and it's like, you work in cannabis media, like, how do we appeal to a newer generation? I mean, just like what you said, you haven't smoked a J. Some folks that, I know the younger generation, they love to vape. And that's another thing too, is we want to caution people, like, not every, make sure your plug is reliable, because you never know what's in a vape sometimes.
Right. So that does actually tie in a little bit to how I got into the space in the first place. Was I have spent many years as a culture creator, performer, journalist. I had really a whole career as an arts and culture reporter before I switched over to the cannabis side. And I don't even really consider it switching, because I feel like there's so much room for all different kinds of themes and reportage within the cannabis space, and that it should be a natural kind of crossover.
Oh yeah, cannabis arts and culture is like, it's been a niche, but you're helping to make it mainstream, which is awesome.
Definitely putting it out there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had done a lot of years of freelancing for places like HuffPost, New York Observer, Billboard, in addition to being an actor and a writer in the New York scene. And I had gotten introduced to Ronit Pinto, the founder of Honeysuckle, when I was just doing a lot of freelancing. A lot of writer friends that I knew had written for Honeysuckle, and Ronit's 4th print edition was coming up, and we had talked about me possibly working on some stories for that. By the time that she was on to producing the 5th issue, this was in 2017, I was working with her more and more often, and she said, we're going to be doing something really big. The next issue, we're going to be getting into the cannabis space. Because at that time, each issue of Honeysuckle was themed to something specific. And she was starting to look at the stories that were coming out of the cannabis space, which were very much human rights oriented, social justice oriented, which were about science and education and all of these different things that we would have been covering anyway in Honeysuckle, just because these were things that were interesting to us, right? And the fact that cannabis was also a little bit taboo and we could help to normalize the conversation was a great thing as well. And so we had initially planned for it to be the one issue and then continue to have cannabis as a vertical. And the way that we were welcomed into the community was just so overwhelming and so amazing. And also the stories that we got from everybody, because we spent months and months going to every event that we could, talking to every brand, talking to every organization that we could find. And we did not have enough room for all the stories in that first issue. But
that's awesome.
We did, we did that year go to MJ BizCon in Las Vegas for the first time. We were one of the first cultural publications ever accepted to cover MJ BizCon. Previously, they had only had direct B2B, business to business publications covering it. And so they had actually pushed back a little. It took us a while to convince them to let us in. But once they did, we just found that there were so many different layers and nuances to being part of the cannabis community. And one interview there that we did that really changed the game for me was with Dr. Inbar Maimon Pomeranchik, who is a founder of BioDiligence from Israel. And she was talking a lot about the actual science of the plant and what it was doing for things like autism and cancer treatment, and able to work with people who were going through different kinds of chemotherapies and all the different methods of treatment and wellness benefit that the plant had. And so for me, this was the most exciting thing, to see how the plant could at some point transform our lives. And that's kind of spurred me ever since.
I mean, I know they've done a lot of research in Israel on the plant. God rest the soul of Dr. Meshulam, who, for carried cannabis research, through prohibition, through the high times of 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way into the 90s, and still continue to teach and lecture and on that, and just passed away recently. But I think that we have to continue to uplift, like you said, the science, because there's been so much bad science and bad propaganda from our own government and from our mainstream media around cannabis. The fact that you still have the old 80s propaganda of, this fries your brain cells, and then they find out cannabis helps with neurogenesis and in dementia patients and people with brain damage from strokes. And that's the thing too, is that on the business side of things, the media only covers dispensaries, and they only want to cover the bad things that some dispensaries or multi-state operators are doing. But there is real research that's being done in states, and some of these cannabis retailers are really helping patients titrate and understand their own bodies and how the cannabis is helping them. And much of the anecdotal research that we get from the benefits of cannabis is because of the retail side and the retail industry. So it's great that you got a chance to connect with MJ BizCon too. I mean, Carlos, you've been to MJ BizCon.
Yeah.
What's that like? Like, tell the viewers a little bit of what's like to go to a marijuana business convention in Las Vegas.
I miss the days. There were a few MJ BizCons in Florida.
Nice.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
They would actually consider Florida to be like a market to come to. But no, MJ BizCon, and honestly, any cannabis show in Las Vegas is incredible. MJ BizCon, I go to Champs for the shop like quite often.
I went to the Champs trade show with you in Orlando one year. That was pretty cool.
Dude, in Vegas, it's like 4 times the size.
Whoa.
Yeah. And MJ BizCon is a little bit more than, it's not just smoke shop stuff. It's real cannabis stuff. It's dispensaries. It's, ancillary businesses to dispensaries.
Consumer tech, new vaporizers you can buy.
Yeah. And it's really interesting how diverse the industry is, what you can find at a place like MJ BizCon.
Okay. I have a question for Jamie.
Go for it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had the nice experience up there, though. I have to go one year. So, yeah, keep me in the loop with that. I've never been.
We should all go.
Yeah, we should go to Vegas in the upcoming BizCon. Yeah.
Maybe we can set up out there. Never know.
We'll see what
it's incredible. There are representatives from over 75 countries that come to it. It's huge. They've had an average of 35,000 attendees every year.
Yeah, definitely.
It's insane.
My type of show right there. I'm definitely a people's person. But really quick, Jamie, so just go back to what you were saying. When you mentioned about stories, where are you getting the stories from? Is it just regular like cannabis supporters, or are these businesses? And what kind of stories do you publish?
Well, Honeysuckle is a lifestyle and culture publication that focuses on cannabis stories. Some people have said that we are as well a little bit of a B2B because we do tell a lot of brand based storytelling, and we do shine a light on entrepreneurs doing really cool things in the cannabis space. But I think we do get to intermingle a lot of different areas. We always have, celebrity covers. Ice-T was on our most recent cover, and then we have Be Real on a cover that is coming out.
Cool, very cool.
This next week, we'll be in Mary Jane Berlin, our founder will. So make sure to keep an eye out for that cover. You're going to see it everywhere. And we do a little bit of, there's fashion, there's interesting centerfolds and discussions about sexuality. There's a lot of looking at, how does this plant apply to our lives? Right, because we always have conversations in the medical and wellness spaces. We have conversations with people who are doing things in film and photography who are able to integrate cannabis into their work. Okay. So we really find it from all over. When we first started getting into the space, there were a lot of direct conversations with people who had been advocates for a very long time and were starting to look at what it might look like to transition from legacy to legal. So you had a lot of small businesses who were building their brands. And then we were also talking to people who were on the medical side and looking at what that would be like if New York, New Jersey went recreational, because we weren't there yet. It was 2017, 2018. So there was just a lot of stuff going on. We spent a lot of time actually in the hemp movement as well, which definitely has overlap, but is its very own flavor of advocacy, because the people that were on the forefront of hemp still are doing enormous things with construction of homes, with using industrial hemp for environmental purposes.
Right.
That's a big thing that I think we don't talk about enough in just the cannabis space, period. Whether, as a consumer thing, like, there's a hempcrete house in the Tampa Bay area here out in Tarpon Springs, that's like carbon negative, like it's helping the environment. And I remember when we first found it, we had a member, Hayden Falk, who had a fancy 420 race car, and talk about how cannabis biodiesel is really a big thing, and we don't talk about the fact that you can literally grow gasoline and turn weed into gas. Yeah, that gas is literally that gas.
Gas is gas.
So Jamie, that's awesome that you're covering that and really making that splash. I think that's something that we really gotta uplift. But it being a lifestyle and culture magazine, that's you're also highlighting people. People want to read about people.
Right.
So
right.
Katrina's the people person, so she had all the questions about people.
Yeah, and just to go off of that, that's pretty real dope. To be honest with you, I really do appreciate it. It does help get the word out. But also, have you guys ever considered or talked about like the criminal aspect of things? Have you gotten any personal stories of people saying, "Oh, I'm looking for help," or "Can you do this?" or any resources to help me out with this charge that I have because of this? Has anything changed since certain things have become legal in your state?
100%. We have done a lot of looking into the criminal aspect of it. One of our first big stories in that initial issue was actually covering what was then the Washington v. Sessions case, which was a class action suit against the Department of Justice, trying to claim that the Controlled Substances Act of 1970 was unconstitutional. And one of the key attorneys, I will give a little shout out to, was Joseph Bondi, who is
Joe Bondi.
Yeah. He is the chair of the Normal Board of Directors, and I am also his communications director, full disclosure. So I work very closely with Joe, but that was how I met him first, was through our coverage of that case. And he is just an amazing, amazing person, a brilliant advocate, lifelong cannabis legalization movement advocate, and just an incredible professional, an incredible friend. So, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if not for Joe.
Joe is an amazing person, and he really, as chair of the National Legal Committee for NORML, keeps all the lawyers involved, throughout the country, and helping make sure that they're pushing the organization forward, but also to make those legal seminars. We got one coming up in Key West that has been going on for almost 40 years, and so lawyers from all across the country get the opportunity to come and get education credits, connect with other lawyers in the space, and I was shocked because when I was talking to Keith, the founder of NORML, and Joe, they're like, yeah, the place we go, we spark up. I'm like, y'all been sparking up in Florida for 40 years, don't get rated. And then I was like, what is a conference of lawyers? And that's when I realized lawyers don't go to jail for weed. They're not like the rest of us. They got some type of privilege. That's what Peter Tosh was saying. Judges smoke it, lawyers smoke it. but I say all that to say, Jamie, you're doing a lot of great work in regards to helping NORML out, helping Joe out with the board of directors, our communications. We really appreciate all that you're doing, and then uplifting those individual stories at Honeysuckle. I think, to Katrina's point, we've seen the Last Prisoner Project really do a lot to uplift individual stories of people who have been overly criminalized for cannabis, to help people get out of prison. And that's something I really want us to do at NORML as well, is uplift those stories. And as we see these multi-state operators making millions and projecting billion-dollar revenues, and just making boatloads of money, and being able to pay CEOs ridiculous amounts to essentially live their lives by selling weed. And then there's people who have their entire lives taken away, sitting in a cage right now for selling weed.
And it's legal.
Yeah, and
it's still legal in many of those states that they're still sitting in jail in, like New York, where you're at.
Yeah, well, and I will mention, so Honeysuckle has always been very devoted to prison reform coverage. If you go onto our website, there is a whole section, a whole vertical just dedicated to stories of people who have been in prison and
what's the website? What's the Carlos? Flash that website. What's the website, Jamie?
It's honeysucklemag.com.
Okay, honeysucklemag.com. Check out. And you said the prison reform section.
Yes. And so a lot of these stories, many are cannabis related. There are also many important stories in there that are not necessarily cannabis related. But again, this is how being in the cannabis space really helped expand our horizons, right? Because the more that you talk about what individuals in prison are going through, the more that you start to talk about what other issues may be keeping people in prison, or which other sections of the legal system might be impacting people's lives that we don't even know about. So I always saw cannabis as a great vector to talk about other social issues. Like, we have a really great partnership with Shawana Vaughn, who is the founder of a wonderful humanitarian organization called Silent Cry Inc. And they do so many different programs to help families of people who are currently in prison, who are re-entering society after being released from prison. And they do a lot of really great work on behalf of prisoners' rights. We've done stories with them that have been exposing health management in prison. So there were prisoners in California who were not getting the treatment that they needed for their own medical care. And one of those inmates actually did get compassionate release based on our article and the petition that was circulated with it.
Nice.
That's awesome.
I love those kind of stories, because now that space is for a criminal. Now that space is for a rapist. Now that's a pedophile or something. You know what I mean? Empty that box for the guy that's trying to just smoke weed and live their life. Okay.
Well, more than that, Jamie brings up a good point. If the legal system for so many years has gotten cannabis wrong, what else have they gotten wrong?
It does.
Not everybody in jail for cannabis, but there are people in jail serving for felony sentences for driving with a suspended license, right? Because maybe they couldn't afford to pay a ticket. I mean, the most expensive thing to be in America is poor.
Right.
And we see so many crimes that in America are really poverty based. I recall hearing a rich guy say one time, he time is one thing he can't afford to waste, so he had no problem getting a $200 parking ticket. He's like, oh, it's just $200 for valet in his point of view. It's a civil fraction. Like, if there's a crime in America where it's just a fine to pay, then that crime is only for poor people. And there's so many people, when you can't afford to pay those fines, the court costs, and you end up getting slapped in jail, right? And here we are, the folks really, Honeysuckle uplifting those stories. So Jamie, shout out to really all the great work that you're doing. I mean, and I'm glad to have you on the show, because there's so many great people in the world who do so many great things that don't get a platform, or that we just don't know about. And the media is so gloom and doom. We want to uplift these great stories and uplift the great work that you're doing. So I hope that folks get a chance to read Honeysuckle and visit the website. You go to honeysucklemag.com and check out those great stories. So
thank you so much. In fact, let me just get my prop real quick. I do have our latest issue with me.
Okay, all right. Let's check that out.
The latest issue. We are definitely in New York. That looked like New York.
I look like a $4,000 apartment right now in New York. Jamie paid, but you can see that apartment. Like, ooh.
You look like
we were just clowning New York apartments. Like,
God,
they're so functional, but they're so expensive.
I have to say, I mean, I got lucky because I found my place right around when the recession was happening. So everything was much more affordable for a student who was just graduating. And my landlords, big shout out to my landlords. I love them. They have been very reasonable with me over all the time that I have been in this building. So they have made it possible to still be in New York and to...
You're on the island. You're in Manhattan. It's a location. You're in the thick of it. So that's awesome.
It's true, but
a lot of people got to cross those bridges just to get to work. That's a pain in the ass.
I really want to talk about New York City. I know that you're trying to show your latest issue, Jamie. Honestly, New York City really, like, it impresses me as far as when it comes to progress with cannabis. Because as I was telling you before the show, Jamie, I had visited New York a few times. The first time I visited New York, it was a time of stop and frisk. It was a time when, like, you go on the subway and a cop could literally be like, "You come here, and you got some shit on you. I know it." Your people's rights were being violated.
Yeah.
And, like, you could still find really good weed, by the way. But, they were at large, like, really, like, fighting that whole system. And then by the time I visited New York another time, it was like, it was like High Maintenance had come out on HBO. And it was a lot like that. It was like literally like these underground dispensaries, bicycle messengers going everywhere. Menus like literally like dispensaries.
Mr. Nice Guy
underground, Mr. Nice Guy type stuff.
Call Samson.
And now a couple of weeks ago, I'm in the smoking industry, if we haven't mentioned that already. But there's a product I sell, Puffco, and Puffco was found in Brooklyn, I believe. And it was founded in 2018, around the same time that I found my store. And they were in a position where they were like, "Listen, we've got this really great product. We should probably leave New York City. There's so much happening with cannabis in other parts of the country." And then now they did this special and they were like, "We kind of screwed up leaving New York City, because now everything that's happening with cannabis is happening in New York City.
Yeah. There was even a normal formal couple weeks ago in New York City.
Yeah. So now they're actually thinking of leaving LA and coming back to New York. So what is the catalyst? We're here in Florida. They're literally like, I'm scared right now, Jamie. The governor's trying to take my medical card away because I've been arrested for cannabis before. You know, this is something that we should talk about later, probably in the news section. But you know, right now, Florida legislators like really considering revoking some cannabis cards for people that had been arrested for cannabis and convicted of cannabis in the past. You know, which is the craziest thing in the whole world. Like, you know, these are the people that needed medical marijuana cards, the people that were going into the black market and buying it before. So what was the catalyst for New York City? What was it, you know, for somebody that's there in Manhattan and running a magazine that's, you know, all about cannabis culture? You know, what was the catalyst? What could Florida do that to emulate New York, basically?
Honestly, one thing, and different versions of this story get told different ways. Okay. But I was there, so I think I can tell this version of the story. Cool. You know, in New York, during periods before full legalization, we had a lot of underground smokeasies, right? I mean, they were in some ways kind of an open secret because everybody in the cannabis community, even in different states, I think, heard about some of these different parties and venues. One of the ones that made a big splash in New York was Happy Monkey, which you may know today for being the name of a retailer. And so Happy Monkey at the time was more of an underground smokeasy sort of venue. But what was great was that it was showing how everyone in cannabis, or even people who were just interested in a smoking or consumption experience, could meet in a safe place, in a lounge style environment, and connect with people from really all over the world. And this environment was actually shown to people who were in the government at the time, working with the state government. The reason why this occurred, and again, this is the part where there are different versions of this, but the reason why this occurred is because I had actually run into Doug Green, who was very big in NORML at the time. He was a very well-known cannabis advocate on the East Coast, one of the heads of New York City NORML at the time. And I said to him, you know, you really should go check out Happy Monkey because they're doing some great things. And from Doug getting to go see what Happy Monkey was all about, he then was the one who invited government reps to go check it out and encourage Cuomo that this is a good model for what recreational legalization could look like. And wheels were in motion from there.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. So that is like, man, I wish we could take Ron DeSantis to come by here, right? Yeah, Carlos, bring him out, chill him, and have the governor do a dab, right? And it is, tell me, Ron, is this so bad? You know, is the sky gonna fall?
It's honestly what I hear is you just I don't know how to say this better, but you know, in order to make any real movement, you just got to be brave. You got to have balls.
Yeah,
you got to have some fucking balls.
Well, you know, to go from pop up to retailer, right? That takes balls, right?
It reminds me of the first cannabis dispensary in the U.S., the Cannabis Buyers Club in San Francisco. The first cannabis laws that ever passed in California were in 1996, but the first cannabis dispensary, the first dispensary ever, was in 1992 after San Francisco. They basically like put out a memo saying that we're not going to care. We've got these fucking gangs rolling around, and you know, we're not going to care about this weed stuff anymore. We've got bigger fish to fry. So if you want to smoke weed for medical reasons, we're not going to care about it. And that started, Dennis Perone started the Cannabis Buyers Club, and they got raided, and they got, you know, Perone got arrested, but he eventually went on to help write the laws.
Yeah. Shout out to
And
Dennis
you
Perone.
know,
Rest in peace.
that's what we need in Florida. We got to have some fucking balls, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sorry, ladies. There's got to be a better. You guys can
Oh,
correct me
I got
for a
balls.
better way.
You can totally be a chick with balls too. It doesn't, or you can be a person of any gender identification with cojones. It doesn't really matter. But it's all about the spirit.
I'm better at Spanish. Cojones.
Cojones sounds a lot better.
What I will say though is I think that it's important when talking about the catalyst, not necessarily to really give credit to just one person. I mean, you know, the Happy Monkey story is a wonderful story, and I think it did help a lot. But don't forget, at this point in New York history, there were so many different organizations that were working toward legalization. You know, there was New York Smart Start. There was High NY that was doing a lot of the business connecting, still is today. There were so many different organizations that were on the ground trying to move the needle forward. There were so many different small entrepreneurs that were trying to move the needle forward. There were medical companies, only a few, but they were really trying to do the larger scale education and public guidance for that. And so there were all of these different elements that were working together. Happily, there was a catalyst. And now what we're seeing in New York is because we did have such success and people are accepting it more as just a mainstream thing that happens, we are forgetting crucial parts of the conversation where people now who are medical patients don't feel like they're as addressed by the cannabis office, because what is happening is there's become a focus on consumer-based retail. And so people aren't necessarily going to consult with their doctors because they can get stuff essentially over the counter, which is a great thing. But I think that we need to have a little bit more conversation to make it more tailored and more welcoming to the general public. Case in point, you know, when I did have Catherine's book launch event, we had a really great conversation with the audience who mostly just came for her because they were friends or friends of friends and didn't know anything about cannabis. They didn't know the difference between CBD and THC. And so there is a lot of public help that I think needs to happen. There's still a problem. For example, some of the senators on our state Senate committee that is supposed to be overseeing cannabis regulation, there are still state senators who will refer to it as a gateway drug. There are still communities in places like Long Island who don't want retail and voted against it. And so you can't have a retailer in their community. So
that's one thing I wanted to ask you about too, is like, what stigmas are you like, for example, here in Florida, we got DeSantis saying we can't progress with cannabis anymore because he doesn't want Florida to smell like weed, you know. And I've heard, like, you know, it's not even like prohibitionists saying it, you know, it's like just people that just, I don't know, they pick up bullshit and it comes out of their mouth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, for example, I don't think the comedian Jim Gaffigan is necessarily like some anti-pot crusader, but I saw him on a podcast once saying that, you know, I'm for legalization. I just, you know, I don't want to smell weed when I'm walking to the bodega. You know, like like what stigmas are we dealing with? Like
Personal.
what bullshit do you have to deal with when it comes to these, so this fake ass shit? We have senators here in Florida talking about gateway drug theory too,
Well, I want to take a pause on that and talk about fake ass politicians. Jamie, this is from a New York assemblyman, Stephen Katz. This guy in 2013 crusaded against the medical marijuana bill in New York and was sitting there like weed's a gateway drug and bad. Guess what happened in March of 2013?
What happened? He got caught up.
He got arrested for weed by the state trooper. So it's like this. You're right. You're at ground zero right now, where it's happening, and I see a lot of parallels with what you just mentioned about how you got there in New York. Here, I mean, Carlos, we have Suncoast NORML, we got the Florida Cannabis Action Network, Minorities for Medical Marijuana. We got NORML of Florida. We got Tallahassee NORML. We've had the Weed for Warriors Project. We've had lots of grassroots orgs, pushing. We got our friends over at Battle Buds in the bunker. 1620 Marine Pablo giving classes. There are individuals, there are groups, there are retailers, there are entrepreneurs, all pushing. But what I think I see here, Jamie, that really hurts more than anything is that the multi-state operators, some were founded in Florida, are working against us. Now we're working against a multi-million-dollar industry that only wants to see them make money, and they only want and they want to make money at all costs. When I've said from the get-go is that you don't deserve to make a red cent in this industry if you don't remember that sick people are your first clients. And my biggest fear for the medical system here in Florida is what happened in Washington State. How they're in that state, they just cannibalize the medical system. It's all retail, and I've seen in Colorado they got like separate lines for medical and retail. And I just, in Florida, even with the current medical system, it feels a lot like retail because the people behind the counter know nothing about cannabis. They're just like, this is what we got, and it's got this much THC, and this will get you high. And then it's like, well, one, you all are selling moldy bud to people. Two, we know that you've been playing Fugazi with the certificates of authenticity and the testing results. So no, I don't want to pay $80 for your overpriced mids that you're saying is top shelf bud. And then I have to pay $300 a year for my medical card, and then the government says I can only get 270 grams over a 70-day period. And these are the things that really hurt, and this is the thing that we have to be distracted on. Like Carlos said, there is the greater fight against the hypocrites and the prohibitionists, but now we have an industry with a dollar amount motivation injected into us, and we have an amendment that has passed the threshold for Supreme Court review for 2026. And I'm giving paused on it because it is not the same one that we saw in 2024. This one has a public smoking ban in it, so I can still get arrested for smoking weed in a state where weed is legal. So Jamie, help us out here. Well, in Florida, where do we go to you? You're the guru who's on the ground making it happen in New York. Where do you see points of inflection for us to either step on the gas or places where we need to pump the brakes or where we need to redirect?
Wow. That's a good question and a very complicated question.
If you ask me, we need to know the people that I think that's what we lack in Florida. It's not what you know at this point, it's who you know that knows. So not to cut you off, but I think it's like who do you know that know the difference of this and that and why we should have it there.
Yeah. I mean, Katrina brings a great point. Like, are there medical experts you could bring in that these Republicans are going to respect in Florida? You mentioned a doctor from Israel that you help uplift. Like, where's the magic sauce that what's the algorithm we got to put together to get these prohibitionists here in Florida to do like they did in New York? Because like Carlos said, to go from stop and frisk to smoking weed openly in Times Square, that was a hell of a jump. But you pointed out it was a plethora of people that helped push that simultaneously.
Yeah. Well, I will say, in Florida, you have had a tremendous asset in Nikki Fried, who was your former commissioner of agriculture, now is on the board of directors for NORML. And she has been just fantastic in all of her communications about cannabis to the public. I think, honestly, where it really starts is just being able to have conversations one-on-one with people. And I think that's what we're lacking even in New York as well. I think if we were able to have more conversations between people who know the plant and people who are maybe kind of curious, or maybe even not, maybe just really need to know what their essential human rights are, that could be really important. Like I would like to see more people in New York, for example, who are in cannabis having conversations with people who aren't, because we get caught up in a bubble in this industry, in this community, of thinking that, you know, you have to talk to people who are on a certain level of understanding. And that really cuts us off from being able to advance the movement. I think if we could speak to people who are teachers and professors, who are doctors, who may not know what they can prescribe and what they can't. You know, I mean, this is a problem actually that I find in a lot of states that don't have a recreational program, but who do have a medical program, is that they're not educating their doctors on what to say.
No,
So
we had an 8-hour doctor course that they've shrunk down to 2 hours now. And then, you know, just the fact that doctors have to take a course to get certified, you know, like they make more red hoops, and then they use that as like a comparison of false numbers. Oh, there's only 1,000 doctors in Florida for 1 million patients. It's just like the pill mill docs. And it's like, no, you all put bureaucratic red tape as politicians up to not to where if you're a doctor, like you can recommend anything to anybody. You know, the doctors are no different than lawyers when they give out medical advice, just like giving out legal advice. Like you don't do it if you think it's a bad idea and it's going to affect your license. So why can't a doc who's already been through medical school? But then Carlos and I have worked with professors and such like Dr. Greg Gerdeman, who pointed out many of our medical schools in this country are failing to educate about the endocannabinoid system. So, you know, if you don't even get that education as a doc, you know, in your medical school training, you know, then what is this 2-hour course that these politicians put together? Where's their value, you know, actually going to be for you? So yeah, there's a lot more we got to do on the medical side as the retail side advances, the adult use side advances. But yeah, we got to improve the medical side. And then Jamie, I think you bring up a great point. Is like push on that medical and push on improving it. And that's what we continue to do with our legislative agenda. You know, we've have bills to expand the number of qualifying conditions. We've had bills to offer free medical cards to our veterans. And somewhere along the line, every time we get to session, somewhere through session, even if we see some hope, like the medical card for veterans, which shouldn't be controversial, there's always something stupid that curves balls it, whether it's the bill to kill the hemp industry, or whether it's adding THC caps as a poison pill to the legislation. And this is what we've been fighting for the past decade on the ground as Suncoast Normal here in Florida.
Absolutely. And I will say, you know, that I am going to plug. So this is actually the same issue as our iced tea issue, just different covers. This is one Quesada from the Backpack Boys. Oh. So we always do one celebrity cover and one culture cover. Nice. But, you know, this issue and our one that's coming out at Mary Jane Berlin have a lot of what's going on in Europe right now.
Yeah, and I saw they got Germany is moving. We see CBD in France and Italy. Yeah, you know, we got the cannabis clubs in Barcelona and Spain. You know, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so this is, I think, where Europe is going to be pulling out ahead of us, right? Because their medical programs are more advanced than the ones in the US, because they can be, first of all, unified federally. And yes, you know, a lot of the European nations who are investigating medical, like Germany just, you know, really stepped up its medical game starting from last year. They are really doing a lot in patient customization, which allows them to figure out what kinds of conversations doctors and patients should be having, what kind of conversations pharmacists and patients should be having. It doesn't lend a lot to the recreational side yet, but it is a good way to at least start the conversation with people who might not otherwise be on board with it.
Yeah, and Carlos and I have talked about that, in the past too, in regards to, patients and doctors should be communicating with each other so you can figure out the right treatment plan for you. There are so many cultivars out there. I mean, if you go on the Leafly or some of these weed dictionary sites, and you see, there's so much, different strains out there that can benefit folks. And I'm glad you're uplifting that in Honeysuckle and then talking about them doing that in Europe. So thank you, Jamie. We appreciate that. So,
Oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to talk about it.
no, yeah. Carlos, I think we're at the top of the hour. But before we go into the news, let's just run through last questions. Katrina, you got any last questions for Jamie?
Yeah, okay. So really quick here. When will Suncoast Normal have a little issue in your magazine? When can we get a little spot?
Plug.
Oh, we definitely got to talk about that offline. I'm excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, we would love to definitely get the opportunity to work with you and highlight all the great work on the ground here in Florida. What's happening?
Invite us to some events up there so we can fly.
Yeah. All right. We'll make a point.
Okay.
So
That's it.
yeah, no, I appreciate you. Thanks for that question.
Thank you for being here, Jamie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I'll shout out a few more Manhattan dispensaries while I'm at it. Just a little higher. Such great dispensary there. They actually have a few different locations under the Just a Little Higher banner, which is awesome. The Herbal Care, Upper East Side, always a great place to go. Torches, another great place in Midtown. The Flowery, they have had several different locations in New York, and they're a Florida-based company, but they're working with licensees in New York to create some really amazing things. Terp Bros, they're out in Astoria, Queens. They're really rocking it, and they're also featured in our upcoming issue that you'll see at Mary Jane Berlin. Con Bud, of course, originated on the Lower East Side and is now, opening some other locations. Newest one in the Bronx, also featured in our latest issue. So, there are just awesome things happening in New York all over. And
so basically, if you're in New York and you want to know where to get bud, go on the Honeysuckle and read up on these different dispensaries that y'all have been covering, and then that's the place where folks can find an easy access way to get a hold of it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and just in general, there's a lot of great information on honeysucklemag.com, of course, and on our Instagram at Honeysuckle Magazine. There's really cool stories going on about what we are seeing in Europe and in other nations abroad. There is going to be a lot of really cool creative stuff coming very soon from Honeysuckle. There's also going to be a lot of ongoing news about what is happening from the legal front, because we did just get a new Cannabis Control Board chair a couple of weeks ago, and so we are seeing some new turnovers in leadership. New York is going to have a new mayor at the end of this election year, so we'll see what that brings.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show we can do of like which mayor candidate is going to be the best for cannabis and moving forward. So maybe that's something we can talk about in a future episode. Bring you back on as the election season heats up and see how that's going to shake out. I think again, elections matter, and who these people are, and putting the bureaucrats in charge of regulating cannabis makes all the difference. I mean, we've seen what inept bureaucrats in Florida can screw up when we got a good system. So it remains to be seen the new leadership that'll be elected in New York City and how that affects the industry. So I look forward to having you on a future episode, Jamie. We can talk some more about that.
Oh, I would love to, Chris. I have some strong opinions, though.
That's okay. We want to hear them. We want, that's the beautiful part about this show, and all the folks who are commenting and who like the show. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're jumping into rotation for the first time. And share this across social media. You might be watching us on YouTube or Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, wherever that may be. But all in all, yeah, opinions. We want to uplift all opinions. We've even giving folks who we disagree with platforms on here, because we want to make sure that when folks are informed about an issue, that they know all about it. One thing we won't tolerate, though, is lying about cannabis. You know, the Just Say No crowd, they drive me crazy sometimes. You know, as much as I have been promised that people were going to offer me free weed in my lifetime, I am so mad. Like, shame on the Ninja Turtles for telling me that as a kid.
Man.
If anybody was holding, it was Michelangelo.
Michelangelo, man. I'm telling you, can't nobody tell me he wasn't always
Yeah,
told.
yeah. For
Oh,
sure.
no wonder he was my favorite.
Yeah, Michelangelo was the guy. He was the smoothest.
You gotta be the down 5 pizzas with peanut butter and anchovies at the same time. So
something that's going on, he was the most chillest. Like, come on.
Yeah. But all jokes aside, Jamie, thank you for joining us today in the rotation. We appreciate you. And with all of that, Carlos, I think it's time for the normal news. Well, look, at the top of the news hour, we're going to talk about this. I think it's very important. And if you're listening right now, pay attention, okay? Right now, they are trying to take away patients' access to medical cannabis in Florida. As we know, the Florida legislature is in overtime right now because they couldn't pass a budget during the normal legislative session. And members of a conference committee, that's when the two houses have to get together and decide what the final bill is going to look like, are finalizing right this moment a bill out of the Health and Human Services appropriations to include language that will disallow those with prior drug convictions from participating in the state's medical cannabis access program. You heard me right. If you've been arrested for weed, they don't want you to be able to legally buy medical marijuana. Specifically, it will require the State Department of Health to revoke the medical marijuana use registry registration of qualified patients and caregivers who enter in certain plea or are found guilty of certain medical marijuana related or other drug related offenses. Now, this means that out of the nearly 900,000 people in Florida who participate in the medical marijuana program and who rely on that, they're going to have their past low-level marijuana convictions threaten their ability to get safe access. More than that, let's say you were someone who was an opiate addict and you suffered through the pill mill crisis here in Florida, and now in your 40s, 50s, 60s, however old you are, you're utilizing medical marijuana to help you mitigate your symptoms, to use it as an exit drug and get off the opiates, and now they want to take that away from you. Let's say you were someone when you're in college in the 80s and you sold a little blow at the University of Miami, and now you're a father and you're raising your kids and playing Little League football. You left that life behind, but your back hurts and your knees hurt and you get chronic headaches and you use a little bit of weed to help you get through the day. And now they want to take away your access for some shit that you did back when you were 21. This is the ludicrousness of Florida and the Florida political landscape. And so right now we need you to go and click the action alert. We're trying to get over 400 people to send an email to their legislators and leaders. Carlos has dropped the action alert in the chat in the comments. Click that normal action alert. Do not take away patient access to medical marijuana. You can go ahead. Normal does a great job on these national action alerts. We've already sent in 344 letters just in the past couple of days, but we want to hit our goal of 400. So just put in your name. It'll auto-generate an email, send it to the governor, send it to the legislators, and make sure that they understand that this cannot fly in Florida. We cannot allow this to happen. And what really pisses me off in all of this is that it's happening in a backdoor session. The conference committee is closed. There is no public comment. There is no input from the people. None of us asked for this. I don't recall anybody this session going up there and advocating for this type of bullshit. And this is what the politicians slip through in backdoor negotiation sessions between each other. Like, oh, we couldn't kill the hemp industry, but we can make sure we take away medical cards for anybody who was a pothead, with a conviction. And like, that's disgusting. That's not how jurisprudence works in this country. When you pay your debt to society, you're supposed to be paid in full, like we're equal again. Now you want to bring up old shit to take away my access to help with a chronic debilitating medical condition. That's just crazy to me. And you don't see that with any other group of people or patients. You don't see people getting kicked off their pain management plans because they got a weed charge. I ain't see nobody. I didn't see the pill mill docs telling nobody they can't get access to opiates.
I'm gonna go ahead and say it. It's fucking racist.
Fucking racist.
It's fucking racist, man. Because the communities that were getting arrested before the medical marijuana system was put in were the minority communities.
It ain't the kids on Bayshore getting arrested.
There's a large Black and there's a large Hispanic community here in Florida, and it was hit hard by cannabis prohibition. And they want to keep on fucking hitting.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah. You know, I would love to take the time to report on 1,000,001 other news things today, but I want to leave it at that. This is probably the most important news story that you're going to hear in Florida this week, is that they're making backroom deals right now to take away your rights to medical cannabis for past drug convictions. And that is something that we need to stop now. So click that action alert, send that to the legislators. And of course, you can visit normal.org for all the latest happenings around the news. And there's numerous other action alerts you can take advantage of, especially if you're watching this in other parts of the country. You can find out what's happening in your state. And if you don't have a normal chapter in your state, visit normal.org, find out how you can start a chapter, get things going. You know, for over 11 years now, we've been taking names, kicking ass here on the ground at Suncoast Normal to make sure that we can do what we can throughout Central Florida and the Tampa Bay area to organize communities of advocates together to push forward public policy, to push forward public opinion. And we've been largely successful in a lot of ways of being able to pass medical marijuana in the state, getting different municipalities and counties to decriminalize and deprioritize cannabis arrest. And through all of that, we still come each and every week to educate the public through the rotation, through the blogs that we've written. You can visit our website, suncoastnormal.org, find out what we got going on, what are the latest happenings. And we also done the best we can to uplift and create a safe space for the culture. Here in Ybor City, you know, Carlos has given us a space also across the bay in St. Pete at Chillum over there, where we've had some great events. We've had our Halloween parties. You know, Carlos, you even done educational seminars around both hemp, cannabis, and psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, that's how we met, was teaching folks about medical marijuana.
I was actually considering, we'll talk about it off camera, but you got to teach a history of cannabis class.
Oh yeah, I love teaching that class. That's one of my favorite classes.
Really good at that.
Yeah. It is a 4-hour class, and
it's one thing I know about you. You're going to give it to us raw, and we're going to know what it is that we need to know when we leave.
Yeah, well, you know, all in all, we got some great events culturally coming up, and you know, Jamie talked about it earlier in the episode of the great cultural events and spaces they made in New York. Here in Florida, actually here in Tampa, we have Dab Day coming up. You know, 7/10 Dab Day. You know, and the folks celebrate Dab Day. And in Tampa, the 7/10 Dab Day, which has been doing cultural events for the better part of a decade here, is coming back for their second annual one in Tampa at the Cuban Club. Suncoast Normal is actually going to be out there. You can actually check out their website, and we have the link on our website. So go to suncoastnormal.org, and if you type in normal, which is the promo code, you'll actually get 15% off your tickets.
Okay. NORML.
Yes. Yep. So check that out. Go to 7/10 Dab Day. It's going to be here at the Cuban Club on Saturday, July 12th. I'll definitely be in town for that. Carlos, Pink, I know y'all will be out there with us. So come say hi. Stop by the normal table. As a matter of fact, if you want to sign up and be a member, you can do that there at the table in person. Come say hi to us. If you want to leave us a donation to help push us over the top, by all means, we're looking forward to it. And you can actually go on our website right now and click that donation link. So go to suncoastnormal.org, hit donate, whether you can give $1, $2, $10, $20, chip in today to help us fight back. Again, these politicians right now are trying to take away the hard-fought medical marijuana rights that you have right here in Florida that we passed via constitutional amendment. They want to take away your constitutional right to cannabis. Are you shitting me?
They're going to take away the First Amendment.
You know, what kind of world are we living in? So, you know, do what you can to help push us over the top. Hit the like and subscribe button right now. You can do that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like I said, go to suncoastnormal.org. Become a member. You know, we're a membership organization. We're only as strong as each and every one of you supporting us and coming out and uplifting. So, of course, we want to connect you with our great member benefits. Carlos, you actually give a discount to Suncoast Normal members here at Chillum. And And so
Good discount, 25% off.
that's a hell of a
Might
discount.
get your first dab too.
Yeah. So of
Yes.
course, come on down here.
You know what? Free dabs if you sign
I'm
up.
telling you.
Okay, all right. So here you heard it first. Anybody who signs up to suncoastnormal.org and becomes a member today can come in and get one free dab at Chillum by showing their card. So all you Suncoast Normal members out there, come in to Chillum, show you Suncoast Normal membership card. We also have the digital list, so you can sign up today digitally on the website. Get that happening. And again, we're only going to make this happen by each and every one of us rolling up our sleeves and being a part of the movement. Jaime, thank you for being an amazing part of the movement. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, everybody. And of course, a happy Father's Day to my dad as well. He should be watching this.
Happy Father's Day to Jamie's
Before
pops.
we go too, Jaime, please just take a moment, look in the camera, and let people know how they can support you.
Yes. So there are a few different places that you can find me and also find the organizations and the people that I care about a lot. So honeysucklemag.com, it's right underneath me. You can also find us on Instagram at Honeysuckle Magazine. You can find me personally on Instagram and on Twitter as well at Jaime Lubin. That's at my name. And you can also go to normal.org and find out about all of the great work that Normal is doing on national, state, and local levels. And it is so important as well to know who your local representatives are, because they are the people who are going to be making the decisions about what happens in your town and where you can enjoy your cannabis.
Thank you, Jaime. We appreciate you. Look, check us out and jump into rotation each and every Sunday. We got a great lineup of guests coming up for the next month. So by all means, each and every Sunday at 11 a.m., you can watch us. Give us a like on YouTube, a follow. If you're watching on Facebook, go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button as well. Also, shout out to everyone watching on Twitch, watching on X, also known as Twitter. And of course, thank you to everyone who is looking at us on Legalized Florida webpage and Facebook. So, of course, go to suncoastnormal.org, find out all the great things that are happening, and we'll catch you next week in the rotation.
Happy Father's Day again to everybody.
Bye.
Wow.